we're starting to see examples where AI is making mistakes and accidentally deleting things that people need to recover that data from. And I don't remember any other technology that moved that quickly. Now it's like it's a matter of months before you're able to try it, and now it's able to do it. It catches 99% of it. It works amazingly well. You can actually use AI to write the workflows. You can go into ChatGPT or go into Claude and say, I need a workflow in N8N that does blah, and then it'll write the actual JSON for you.
Mike, welcome to the show.
Hey, Aydin, good to be here. Thanks for having me.
This is going to be a lot of fun. I know you do a lot of stuff in AI, and you have a lot of really creative and cool workflows that you've been sharing with other founders and CEOs. And I think a lot of people are borrowing the ideas and things that you're working on. So we're going to do something really nice for everyone and show everybody else some of these workflows. But before we begin, who are you and what do you do?
Yeah, so I am Mike Potter. I am the co-founder and CEO of Rewind. Rewind is a backup application for mission critical SaaS applications covering everything from development workflows, including GitHub, Jira, and Confluence, all the way to e-commerce applications like Shopify and BigCommerce, and accounting software like QuickBooks Online.
So that's really cool. So basically, you're like the disaster insurance, right? So if you're using any of those applications, if you have a Shopify store or use Atlassian product, you make sure that even if someone accidentally destroyed that data, that you would bring it back for them.
That is exactly it. Yeah. Or if AI makes problems, maybe
Oh
even
yeah,
more
that's a new
powerful, which,
thing.
which we're starting to see now, where you're giving unfettered access to AI to create, edit, and potentially delete things. We're starting to see examples from customers and in forums and communities where AI is making mistakes and accidentally deleting things that people need to recover that data from.
Oh, that's actually super interesting. I never thought of it that way. I know that, it's very interesting. When you all started out, it made sense because there was all these apps on these app stores, for example, and they could do the damage, right? You'd install the wrong thing, or maybe you installed the right thing, but you configured it wrong, and then it just deleted the database or something. But now you're right. AI agents can basically make all those mistakes for you. It's very interesting. Like some of these, and I know we're going to dive into Claude today, but a lot of these agentic, functions inside of Claude or ChatGPT or Cursor, whenever they're about to do something crazy or like potentially harmful, they'll say like, "Do you want to allow me to do this?" And then you can allow them, and then they'll do it. But then you get frustrated, and you're like, "Always allow." And then I guess that's when things can go very wrong, but Rewind can come to the rescue.
Yeah, or it's hallucinating, right? And it says like, oh, like I'm going to do this, and then instead it does something completely different. So there's been a couple of examples of that online lately, where the what the code is that it's executing doesn't follow what it says that it's supposed to be doing, and it accidentally makes mistakes that you need to recover from. But yeah, that's the general idea of Rewind is, if something happens to your account, regardless of whether it's AI, an employee, a contractor, relationship going bad, third party app, CSV file import, Rewind is there to make sure that you can recover your data in your mission critical SaaS app the way it was before the problem happened.
It's super interesting. I'm always fascinated by this idea of how AI is impacting current software companies. For some software companies, it makes things worse in that, like, maybe their business is less relevant than before. But I think you're lucky in that it sounds like it's making your business even more relevant in the age of agents. So that's pretty cool. So there's a lot of stuff that we're going to talk about, but one of the things that I've always admired about the way that you've been running Rewind, especially in the last few years, is that you guys were very early on kind of turning your company into being this AI native organization. And part of it is like you're a product builder internally. I remember us having chats in those early days where you started, even when all of these tools were hallucinating left, right, and center. You were building new features, experimental features for your own product, and so you were hands on these sorts of things. But maybe kind of walk me through some of the things that you've done at Rewind and which ones have worked and which ones haven't, and just like any learnings that you've had in kind of bringing the whole company on this journey with you.
Yeah, I think we've definitely been experimenting with AI for years. We've had some success with it. We've had some failures with it as well. From a product perspective, one of the things that we have tried to get AI to do is to build new integrations for us. So the ability to support a new integration that Rewind's gonna support. So any platform that we do backups for, we would call an integration. So whether that's Atlassian, Jira, and Confluence, GitHub, Bitbucket, Shopify, BigCommerce. And one of the ideas we had really early on was whether AI could read the developer documentation of a website and then build the required file or files to back up that particular application. We tried that. I think it's now 2 or 3 years ago. We didn't have much success as it. We're giving it another shot because I think the models have evolved so quickly and so completely that you can actually, I think, do that now where it can write the integration code for you. So that was one that we tried a long time ago, and we failed. I
And
think
by
where
the way,
we
that's something I was going to say that like we have thought about a lot too, which is, you know, like our company benefits from if we're connected to more tools as well, but it's just such a pain to build all these integrations and you just think like shouldn't it be possible where if you built one, it can just follow the format and then just build many more. So, yeah, I'll be curiously following along your journey as you do that.
and to stay up to date, I think, right? Like I don't know what you're integrating it, but from a rewind perspective, because we do backups, you have to really cover the entire platform. So any new feature API that they expose, we need to make sure that we're able to back up that data and then be able to restore it. So the development that the platforms are doing, we constantly have to respond to that, because we don't just do one subsection of the API, we do the whole thing. And so for us, just maintaining the integrations that we have is a ton of work, and something that we think AI can really help with. So yeah, not only like create the integration at the start, but now monitor all the changes that are going into that API and now modify the code so that we can support all the changes that they've got as well.
The other interesting thing here is and I love that you're going back to it is that you basically have to retest your assumptions in all of these. We tried it, didn't work. Like every 6 months, you need to kind of try it again. And yeah, it's really cool to see you all going back into that. I think you're going to have a lot of success this time. Is this the type of work that developers are just super excited to do, or is it actually like very tedious and tough work to put together?
Staying up to date with it or writing the AI integration. I think the AI integration and writing that tool is really neat. Like that's what they get excited about. And one of the reasons they're excited about it is because it's tedious work to be just following, an update to an API and having to modify the code to handle a new API endpoint that Atlassian's adding to their platform, for example. Right. So the nice thing about it is you're working on pretty cool stuff in terms of AI and being able to generate these configuration files that we need to back up the new platforms. And in doing that kind of exciting work with cutting edge technologies, you're removing a really tedious one. So I think developers get pretty excited about, the combination of that.
We have a similar workflow where we haven't done it for integrations yet, but we're doing it for importers. So if someone is using a competitor product and they want to switch, we have these importers. And it turns out if you build one, they're all relatively similar. So that's one area where we've had some success. And again, it's not like you click a button and it all magically happens, but AI has definitely sped up that process.
Yeah, and I think that's just a perfect use for AI, isn't it? And you're right in that you really have to try it every 6 months. I actually think that window is probably shortening, to be honest with you, where it feels like now it's getting to be like almost every 3 months where they're coming out with new models and things that you couldn't do before. And I've told the team quite a lot that like that's exactly what you have to do. You have to retry stuff that doesn't work today. Try it again next week. Try it in a month. Try it in 2 months. And I don't remember any other technology that moved that quickly. Most of the stuff was, oh, try it today. Oh, it doesn't work. Okay, try it in a couple of years, and then maybe it'll be able to be done, sort of thing. Now you're right. It's like it's a matter of months before you're able to try it, and like now it's able to do it.
So I have a question about this. Knowing this, that things are moving so quickly and it's easier and easier to build with AI, which means that probably all the platforms that you're backing up, they're advancing at an ever rapid pace and will only get faster. It kind of makes you think about like what does that I guess like the cost of the products that we're building. It feels like if you know that the things that you're building need to be updated so quickly, it feels like the shelf life of anything that we build is lower and lower. Does that kind of like change your view on how much time you should spend on any given thing, or like how you should approach it?
I think the code is getting shorter, but I think the architecture can be long lived. So I'll give you one example of that. So where a long time ago we used to have so Shopify would send us webhooks whenever something changed. So rather than asking Shopify what's changed to update the backup, it would send us notifications through webhooks. And originally in the very, very start, we had that webhook hitting the same server that the web application was on. And there are companies at Shopify who will update inventory levels overnight, for example. And so we'll receive an influx of webhooks, and the web application will crawl to a halt because we're getting all these webhooks at the same time and now can't process them all quick enough. And so we wrote this code a long time ago that processed them out of bound, that put them into an SQS list, and then went through the list on its own pace. The architecture for that system, I think, is really solid. And that was written 8 years ago, I think 9 years ago. Last month, it handled like 1.1 billion webhooks. I'm sure the code that handles those webhooks has been rewritten multiple times and changed. And if AI were in charge of it, we could rewrite it again. But I think the architecture is really the key point. So I think you're right in that the code is probably a bit more, a bit less relevant than it used to be. But I think the architectural principles that you're using to build your software will outlive all the code. And that's really where you need to be spending a lot of time making sure you're designing the systems correctly.
Hey everyone, just a quick pause on today's episode to tell you about my day job. In addition to This New Way, I'm the CEO of a company called Fellow.ai, and Fellow is an AI meeting assistant. It joins all your meetings, it summarizes them, tracks the action items and the decision, and does that better than any other tool that you've seen. We've spent a ton of time making sure that the meeting notes and summaries and action items that come out of Fellow are the most accurate, the most precise. It beats any human. You have to try it. But in addition to that, what makes Fellow different is that it is the first AI note taker built from the ground up with security and privacy in mind. This means that you can use it for all your meetings, not just the customer-facing ones, but also the sensitive ones, things like one-on-ones and executive team meetings and those QBRs and everything in between. It's got really good judgment. So for example, if you start a meeting and you're talking about some social stuff that you don't really want on the record that's going to get emailed to everyone afterwards, Fellow just knows. It just doesn't include those things. Or say you have something that you talked about and later on you realize, oh man, that shouldn't have been there. It makes it really easy. You can go back to the meeting, select that part, delete it, and then it's gone from the record. It connects to all of the other tools you use in the organization, whether that's Slack or Asana or HubSpot or Salesforce or Linear or Jira or Confluence, whatever it is, Fellow integrates with all those things. I think the best part is that Fellow also acts as an AI chief of staff. Because it sits on all the meetings and the conversations that you have access to, you can ask it really cool questions such as, what are the biggest opportunities in my company? What are the bottlenecks in engineering? And Fellow just pieces together information, sees trends, and it can answer those sorts of questions. It can even do things like, hey, based on all of the one-on-ones that I've had with this particular person, can you create them a performance review? And it can do things like that too. And the sky's really the limit. What I really wanted you to do is have the opportunity to try out Fellow, check it out, and we're making a special offer available to all our listeners. So just go to fellow.ai/thisnewway to try Fellow. There's a discount code in there for you if you decide to continue with it. Either way, I would love for you to try it and let me know what you think. And with that said, let's go back to the episode. So you've tried with integrations. What else have you all tried?
We've really embraced AI internally. We now have somebody whose job it is to help from an AI perspective, like an AI engineer internally. That's a new role that we've just started in the last few months, and we've hired somebody into that role. And so their job is to stay up to date with everything that's going on with AI, to build workflows for other people in Rewind, to build applications that might be useful for us. And yeah, you're starting to see that person executing that, where they're able to actually build some internal apps that we need that are really, really useful for us. They come from a customer support background, so they're building some really neat CS tools that the team can use to help support customers a little bit quicker. but they're also educating the rest of the team. So we just had our lunch and learn today. We do a monthly lunch and learn on everything that's new in AI. And he started off that presentation showing a couple of things that he'd been working on, bring us up to speed with Claude. He's posting in Slack on all the updates that we've had over the last few weeks on, Gemini's recent release and Claude's recent release, and then OpenAI's recent release, and all the changes that are going on. I think that's been successful. Like the team has really embraced AI and adopted it for a lot of internal processes, a lot of data analysis. We're obviously using it to write code, like I'm sure everybody else is. The team's embrace of AI has been really really good, and allowed us to be more productive. Measuring the amount of revenue that we're making on a per employee basis, that's gone up considerably over the last year to 2 years since we started using AI internally.
What was the role that you posted? What was the title of the job you were looking to fill when you posted this?
Yeah, I think the title was AI engineer. I don't know exactly what was in the job description, but it was actually this person was basically doing the role already. So it was perfect role for him to take on, which was stay up to date with everything that's going on with AI, educate the rest of the team. And if people need workflows built or applications built, your job is to either build or help them build those applications. And so what I saw was, even my assistant was building N8N workflows and struggling and sometimes to create those workflows and get them actually working. I've built a bunch that I've struggled with actually getting them working the way I want them. And you realize that if there was an expert on N8N, in this case, is the tool that we're using for building most of these workflows, we'd be saving a lot of time. We wouldn't be wasting our time. I'm not sure that my EA should be spending time building a workflow. I think she should be able to say, "Hey, I would love for AI to automate this for me. It integrates into Notion and builds my task list that I can take care of." But I'm not sure that her job should be actually building that particular workflow. And when we saw, not just her, but other people in the company trying to use AI and trying to embrace AI, but sort of struggling with the actual building of N8N workflows. And we thought, you know what, it would be better to just have somebody build these for us. So let's have somebody go sort of watch what people are doing, interview them, talk to them, understand what their job is, understand how they can use AI or what they're asking for, and then go and build those. And then on the other hand, watch people what they're doing and then have them, potentially suggest ways that AI might be able to help them do their job a little bit more effectively. I think AI is one of those ones that's tough, right? Because it does so much. It has such a broad base that it's sometimes hard to think about what can it do in my particular job, because it can basically do everything. It's like example I give is like going into Home Depot and you don't know what you need. You don't know what aisle you're in. You don't know where to go. AI is a bit like that, where it's so broad. You almost need like an expert who's going to come to you and say, okay, what are you looking to do here? And then let's guide you to the proper solution.
And so is their background like, were they an actual engineer who wrote code, or were they just a very technical producty type person?
Yeah, just a technical product person. I think we originally thinking that we needed somebody who would write code. I've heard some people describe that when you're undergoing transitions from a software development standpoint, it helps if you know the old language and the new language. So if you're going from machine learning to basic, it helps to know both of them. Or if you're going from the C languages to the scripting languages, it helps if you can also know C. And I think you're undergoing that same transformation now from a lot of the scripting languages that people were using into English, really, as the programming language. So we thought it would help to have somebody who knew how to program. Ultimately, we decided that that wasn't necessary, that it was really moving at such a pace that just having somebody who was totally embracing AI, who was really passionate about it, who was already following it, who was already staying up to date, who was embracing it in his role, that outweighed the need for somebody to be very very technical in it.
So before you hired this person, was there anybody else who was in charge of AI adoption at the company?
No, not really. I think we've tried at an exec level to encourage as many people to use it as possible. So we've been running these lunch and learns, I think, for over a year now, where we get anybody who wants to can just sign up, just talk about how you're using AI personally or professionally. It doesn't matter. All we're trying to do is get people to think about creative ways that they could use AI in their own jobs. And I think the best way to do that is to see how other people are using it. The second best way, at least from my perspective, has been to encourage people to use it as much as possible, not just in work, but in personal life as well, right? So try and have it on your desktop, try and have it on your mobile phone. Use it for planning your next vacation, using it for planning your meals, using it for planning a workout routine, whatever you're gonna do, just start using it so that when it comes time to use it at work, you're as comfortable and familiar with it as possible. So we had done some work internally on trying to encourage that, on running these lunch and learns and getting people to share their knowledge, of giving people access to accounts so that they could use it, really encouraging them to try as many AI tools as possible and not really worry about the cost. Just, you're in experimentation mode here. Let's try and get as much usage as possible and see if stuff works. If it works, great. If it doesn't, no problem. We can always cancel. That's the sort of approach that we've taken over the last year and a half or 2 years.
And to get very tactical here, so you're in office, but you have multiple offices across multiple cities, and then you have some people who are remote in cities where you don't have offices. How does a lunch and learn work just tactically? Like everybody gets, is it in separate offices or is it like a virtual presentation? Do you buy them lunch? Do they bring lunch? How does it work?
Yeah, we'll bring lunch into the offices. And so today, like we were in Ottawa, we ordered pizza. We all gather around. We have a common room here in Ottawa where we'll meet. And there's a room in Toronto where the Toronto office was meeting. And then there were people remotely connecting into that Zoom call as well. And then anybody could sign up. It's just an open Confluence page where you just add your name, what the topic is. We encourage everybody to do it a couple of days before the meeting, just as a reminder. Hey, if you're doing something cool, sign up here, and then you're just able to present. You just share, 5-10 minutes of what it is that you're working on. Some go longer, some go shorter, some are work related, some are personal related. The point is just to try and encourage as much AI use and get people as familiar and yeah, comfortable with the tool as possible.
And do you find that everybody does volunteer, or do you have to sometimes nudge them to do it, or do some people volunteer more than once while others don't?
Yeah, there's definitely some people who volunteer more often. I think there's some people who are more engaged in it, who are more comfortable presenting, which is fine. I think we don't force everybody to present into it. We did do we had an OKR in Q3 related to AI, where we actually did force each team to present how they were using AI, and we aggregated all those presentations. So in some cases, like we have forced people to make sure that they're documenting how they're using AI. But for the lunch and learn, it is, yeah, strictly volunteer. If you want to come in and present, we'd love to have you. It's also not mandatory to attend. It is recorded, so we do share the Zoom recording at the end of the call, but it's not mandatory for you to attend. If you can attend, that's great. If you've got other calls, don't worry about it. If it doesn't really interest you, that's fine. But it's not mandatory to present.
Got it. And so, what are some of the examples of things that people have presented?
Yeah, I mean, there's tons of examples that we've got of over the years. I mean, we did one today, so that one's super easy. So my EA actually showed how AI was able to create a Christmas card, for example, with her dogs, for example. So that was kind of one neat one. There was one that we were using a product called Alloy, where the product management team was able to use this tool called Alloy, which essentially recreated the user interface of the application and allowed them to build new features that they could easily show to potential customers or prospects of new features. So rather than showing them just like a potential slideshow or just an image, you can actually create like a click through mock-up using your own code, using your own tool, which was really neat one. We've done a lot around N8N workflows. That's the tool that we sort of standardize on internally from a workflow perspective. So people have shown, examples on reducing churn, for example. I've done a couple on email automation. We've done stuff around AI video and creating AI videos and doing voiceovers on that, reducing our costs and being able to actually reuse employee voices without them having to record the script. We can just sort of load their voice and load the script and then have them do the voiceover from a demo perspective. it's a wide variety of stuff from an internal perspective, and then from a personal perspective, I've shown things around vacation planning. One of our employees is really into racing and karting, and so was showing like how he was analyzing his track times on one of the karting applications. Like it's just it's a really really wide variety of stuff. Just trying to say, listen, like this is stuff that you should be trying to use as much as possible.
So the one where it was doing a churn workflow, what is that? Or how did that work?
Yes, we get churn data from a bunch of different sources. Rewind goes to market typically through marketplaces. So we will be listed in the Atlassian marketplace, we're listed in the Shopify marketplace, we're listed in the GitHub marketplace, all these different marketplaces. And they all have different ways of uninstalling the application. And in a lot of cases, when you uninstall the application from their marketplace, they have a way of capturing the churn reason. And so in that case, we have to kind of aggregate all of this different data from different places. And we try and figure out, okay, did the customer churn because of something that Rewind did? Did they churn because they closed their account or they closed their online store? And so we load all of the different data into this Claude project. And now we can actually just query into Claude and say, hey, like give me a summary of the reason that people churned last month on the Shopify side. Was there a specific reason? Is there something that people are mentioning more than they used to be mentioning? You can sort of really start to analyze the data in a really effective way compared to what you were able to do before.
And I think that that pattern of you have data that might come from different places. Maybe it's how people found out about your product or why they chose your product or why they churned from your product or whatever it is. And just bringing all that together and putting it into Claude Project, like you said, using N8N to do it or another workflow tool. That's just a good pattern. I feel like basically every business can use some variation of that. So that's a workflow that I think everybody should kind of think about what shape it will be for their own team. But I think that pattern applies to most places.
Yeah, I agree. And I think we've seen that pattern repeated in a bunch of different ways. Like we've got a similar Salesforce tool, for example, where you can analyze win-loss data from a Salesforce perspective. So as long as the team is inputting the proper data into Salesforce, you can extract that into a bunch of CSV columns, and you can go into Claude and you can ask it, any question that you've got. We've written an MCP server into an internal database that we run to sort of track all of our installs. And now you can query Claude, so you don't actually have to do the import export, but it's the same thing. We're just analyzing essentially database data. And I think AI is that's a fantastic use case for AI, where you can just natural language start asking questions against a data set and getting the answers that you're looking for and really dig into stuff.
And you mentioned the MCP server, and that's for for anyone who doesn't quite understand the way that that might work. It's just a way for Claude or ChatGPT to talk to another system. And so it sounds like you've taken a bunch of things that are internal to you, internal data sources, and I guess systems, and you've written an MCP server so that everybody can in your company can have access to that information in a natural language way.
Exactly. Yeah. So you can start querying and say, how have our Shopify installs changed over time? For example, what's the average size of a store that's installing Rewind now compared to before? How many Atlassian customers do we have this month? What's the largest customer that we have? What's the most valuable customer that's installed this month? When was the time that their last backup run? Uh, which accounts have any issues with their backups? Like all the stuff that you could run that same workflow that you talked about in terms of exporting data in CSV and then importing it into Claude or ChatGPT into a project and then asking it data. MCP just saves you the import export step and just allows you to query the data directly from the database. At least that's the application for MCP that we built.
That's awesome. And by the way, have you all decided to standardize on a Claude or a ChatGPT, or do you let everyone use whatever they want?
Kind of let everybody use whatever they want, and I think they all have their strengths and weaknesses. And so, at least from my perspective, I'm using those two, and I'm using Gemini as well. And it just depends sometimes on what the task is that you're asking it to do. I probably am using Claude more than ChatGPT, but that's changed from what it was, I'd say 6 to 9 months ago, where I think I was using ChatGPT way more. I think it's probably going to switch back at some point as well. I'm finding 5.1 to be giving really, really strong answers. And I think that's just the reality is these models are evolving, like we talked about at the start, they're evolving so quickly that you're kind of switching back and forth depending on the task and depending on what it is that you need it to do. At the end of the day, I think you look at the cost of the tools, and there's just it's so insignificant to be spending $20 a month, for instance, for access to them that it doesn't really matter. Doesn't matter which one you're using today. You just keep subscribing to all three of them and testing them against each other.
And like we said, retesting your assumptions. It seems like every 3 months the answer is different. So, hey everyone, hope you're enjoying the episode. One of the common things that we hear is, hey, you all talk about all these different tools, you walk through these demos. Sometimes it's hard for me to follow along. We decided to do recently was take all the things that we talk about, put them in a weekly newsletter. We literally list all the tools, we link to them, and any demo that we walk through, we break it down step by step, put it in this newsletter so it's super easy for you to follow along. And the other nice thing is that if there's someone on your team that you think could benefit, they're working on that subject area, they could use a little bit of AI injection into their workflow, send them the newsletter, send them that particular episode. We make it super easy to do that. It's free to sign up. All you have to do is go to thisnewway.com, enter your email address, and you'll get this weekly email from us. Hope you enjoy it. With that said, let's go back to the episode. The thing that I'm very excited to talk about now is this thing that you have been, I guess, teasing, which is you've created this way to automate your email. I think for any person who is in kind of like information management role, manager role, or anything like that, email has always been a burden. And so now there's like all these tools out there and some startups that are starting that are basically call it like email automators, and they kind of do the work of an executive assistant inside of your inbox, and they're pretty cool, and people should use them. But you figured out a way to do this automatically and just like build the workflows inside of N8N, and it's very exciting. So why don't we just start with what is the workflow? What were you trying to achieve with building this workflow?
Yeah, so it starts with your email setup. So there's a bunch of people. I've posted about this on LinkedIn as well, but I use a multiple inbox system in Gmail. We use Google as our email provider, and I have multiple inboxes that I've set up. So I have my main inbox, but once an email comes in, it gets filtered into one of the multiple inboxes that you can set up. So one of them is, needs action. If there's something I need to take on that, if there's a remind me that I need to read it or read later, I guess is what it's called. There's one that's like not important, but don't forget, so this would be like hotel check-ins or airline reservations, things like that, tickets, registrations, event registrations. We're going to reInvent next week. And so I've got that registration in there. I've got one for my assistant so that if anything needs to be delegated to her, it just goes right into Kelsey's inbox and she can take care of it. I've got another inbox where it's awaiting reply. So if I send you an email, I mark it as awaiting reply, and then I can go through those to make sure that I actually get responded to. So these are, I'm emailing a customer and making sure I want to get an answer from them. I'm asking my team for something, making sure that they're actually handling it. Anything where it's really important and I need to make sure that it actually gets handled, I'll mark it as awaiting reply. And so once I've got all of those inboxes set up, I've got a workflow that runs in N8N. I think it runs every few minutes, where it'll just classify the the email. So it comes into my main inbox, and then it gets classified right into one of the sub inboxes, and that's just applying a label. So if it's applying the read later label, then it goes into the read later inbox, and those inboxes are set up in Gmail to just say, if it has this label, then it goes into this inbox sort of thing. And that's really good because what it does is it gets all of my email out of my main inbox. So when I'm looking at my email, I'm not going through the same email multiple times and processing it, because a lot of people waste a lot of time on that. you're just going to read it once. You're going to put it into one of the sub inboxes, or increasingly AI is going to read it and put it into one sub inbox. And then when you're processing your email in Gmail, it's really easy because you can just walk through that one inbox. So if needs action, for example, I can just stay in needs action. So every email, I know I got to do something. I have to respond to it. There's an action I need to take. I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to respond to the email. The one I really like is like the read later, because you can just go through read later, uber quickly. Like it's just, read the email, boom, done. Read the email, boom, done. So these would be things like, Google News notifications or some of the newsletters that I subscribe to. You're just reading them and then you're deleting them. It goes by really, really quickly. And if you're just in that zone of like, okay, I'm reading every email and I know there's no action I need to take, this is just going to read it and then I'm going to delete it. You can really process it, I find, a lot faster than having to read the email. Okay, think about, okay, what do I need to do here? And then deciding. So I have an N8N workflow that I've created that goes through and then automatically applies the right label depending on the email. And I've set up the instructions for OpenAI, for ChatGPT to go through, takes the instructions and then applies the label. And then once the label's applied, it archives it. It goes into that sub inbox. And yeah, it really saves a ton of time on managing email.
And so before this, did your EA do all of this work, the categorization?
Yeah, some of it. Some of it I would do too. I mean, it's just it was sort of best effort. Like whoever was in the inbox would be doing it, whether it was her, whether it was me. The multiple inboxes thing I've been running for a long time. I'm a massive fan of it. I use it in my personal life as well. Like I cannot imagine managing email without multiple inboxes. It is transformative. I'm a huge believer in that. But yeah, before that, it would be either her or I going through my email and then applying the right label and moving into the right inbox.
That's awesome. So I would love to see what the workflow actually looks like. And maybe we can take a look at one of the prompts that does the classification work.
Okay, so you want to see the workflow? The workflow is super easy, right? So on Gmail, a trigger comes in, or I've also got this backup. I think this one's running every 5 minutes or something. And then it goes in and it just gets all of your messages. And then it loops over those messages. It sends a message into AI. We'll open that up in a second. It adds the label to the message. It then archives, it removes other sub labels and then archives them as well. And it just continues that workflow. It's the easiest, sort of smallest workflow you can imagine. And the magic is really, I think, in the instruction set. So, you're using a relatively old model here, and then the prompt is essentially, you're an email assistant that assigns one of 6 labels based on context. So let's go through the different labels. So this is to me. Now this one is actually detecting spam. So the other thing that I've done is I found that the Gmail spam filter is pretty good, but it doesn't catch everything. And so it's supposed to mark these if anything of the following meets 2 or more of these criteria. So it's unsolicited business proposals, a generic outreach, claims about competitors, inside news, aggressive language.
Oh my God, I love this. This is so good.
Yeah. So emails that reference recent company news without a prior relationship, generic subject lines like checking in, following up. You can just keep adding,
I love
whatever's
it.
getting past your filter. But this
Oh my
this
God. You know
prompt
how I used
covers.
to do this was like I had maybe 140 Gmail filters with things like companies like yours do this or, whatever those phrases were. But I like this so much better. This is much better.
It works amazingly well. Like it catches
But I have a
99% of it.
question. Do you double check its work? Because I'm always worried
I do.
about the situation where
Yeah.
something important does get okay. So you do like every once in a while look
Yeah.
through. Okay.
But it's super easy, right? Because again, you're using that sub inbox. So I go into my inbox and I can just look through them and I can see fairly quickly, like, are there any names that I recognize in that inbox right now? And every once in a while it'll have a false positive, but it is very much not it's not the norm. And then so there's other stuff where I make sure that it doesn't mark as spam. So some of the stuff that comes from my travel, like Air Canada or Fairmont or Marriott or any of the hotels, new demo leads. So this is the form that we have in HubSpot, for example. And then there's stuff that needs action. So anything that requires my direct attention. So important decisions, time sensitive issues, team management matters, financial legal matters, strategic partnerships, stuff to remember, right? So industry reports, analysis, legal documents, travel confirmation, blah, blah, blah. Don't add this label to replies to messages that I've sent. So that's one that I find really important because I don't, sometimes it was doing that. Read later, we talked about this already, right? Newsletters, educational content, non-urgent company updates, conference and event notifications. This is my assistant Kelsey. So anything that comes in here, so you can be really specific about Zoom. And that's it. And it just goes through and gets the email that it needs to classify, and then it does it, and it works
And
amazingly
which model are you using for this?
for one
For one. Okay.
for one
And
mini.
and is there any, rationale to how you chose that model? Or I guess you set this up once upon a time and it works. So
Yeah, I think it was a combination of cost and speed, and maybe not so much speed, but cost and accuracy.
and because the way that NAN charges, I mean, you pay for this directly through your OpenAI subscription, right? This is not
Correct.
tied to NAN. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Cool.
Yeah, so that's one that I
I mean,
found to be
that's
really
amazing. Like, I feel like everybody should do that, and it's literally like you're writing rules to just any person who speaks English on how you would classify these things, and you're not even being like ultra comprehend. Like, this is not a 45-page document. It's just like high level. If you explain it to someone intelligent, how would you explain it? And then they'll just get it. It's amazing.
Yeah, you know what you can do? So I don't remember. I think this is what I did to set this up. I'm not 100% sure. I either did this or I did this after. But you can now connect OpenAI to your email, right? And you can actually sort of give it access to your email and say, okay, analyze the last 1,000 messages that have come in and now create rules to classify those emails into these types of inboxes. And so you don't even really need to write the rules, right? You can actually get AI to write the rules themselves, given the fact that you can now give it access to your inbox. You can do that with Claude, you can do that with OpenAI, and you could actually take a combination of the two results and then merge them so that it's giving you a really comprehensive way of filtering your inbox.
Everybody should build this.
That one I find extremely useful. I think a lot of people waste a lot of time, right, rereading the same email, doing that same thing. And then the second one that I think we're going to show was just I have an email that comes in every morning that gives me a daily agenda. So this one runs, you can see it runs at 7 in the morning, and then it sends me an email brief on what my day is going to be like. And so it goes through Google Tasks, gets a list of my tasks, goes through my calendar, gets a list of the events that I'm going to be in that day, merges those two, prepares the data, just some formatting stuff here to then send it to the agent. And this one's actually using an agent rather than the actual model like it did before. I found this to be a little bit easier to manage all the different stuff that I wanted it to do because it's hitting a bunch of different tools. Maybe I'll just zoom out for a second, but it's using Anthropic's model, but it's using my Gmail and my Google Calendar as tools. And the neat thing about the agent is the agent will figure out when to call into those tools without me having to sort of specify it. And that I found a lot easier for this particular one. So what I wanted to do is go through my calendar, go through my tasks, give me an email summary of what I need to do in the day. But on the calendar side, look up the company that I'm meeting with, look up the person that I'm meeting with, see if there's any interactions that I've had with them before, go through my email and find recent email interactions with that person, go through my calendar, see if I've met with them before, and then give me a summary of what the meeting is likely to be about, given the subject line of the calendar invite, who's in the calendar invite, and any meetings that we've had with that same subject. So that's essentially what this is doing here is, you're my EA processing meetings or tasks for a daily brief. There's a bunch of sort of instructions here. And then you just give it instructions on what to do. So for meetings with attendees, I want you to go through and research with Gmail and calendar tools using specific attendee emails. If it's the first meeting that I've had, add this little alert to it. Return only clean HTML. If it's a meeting for just myself, like to do a lunch block, personal times, etc., then you don't need to do that. And then tool usage for Gmail searches. So use the exact email address. So here's a couple of examples. For multiple attendees, use this query format. Avoid partial names that could match the wrong people. And for calendaring, return all is true after these dates, before these dates, use this query. Forbidden output is sort of listed. Output format comes in here. This is really giving the system the description of what I want, and then it figures out when to call into Gmail, when to call into Google Calendar using this AI agent node in N8N. And the model, the chat model, in this case, Anthropic's model, is figuring out when do I call into all the different tools that I need.
So at the top part, so you had your prompt at the bottom. What is the user message? This is just all the data fields that are
Yeah,
being thrown in?
exactly. Yeah, it's just all the data, whether, whether the subject of the email, or sorry, the subject of the calendar event, whether it's a task, whether it's a calendar event, the subject of the calendar event, the attendees for the calendar event. It's just really formatting the data from calendar and tasks into a way that the model can understand.
From what I remember, NAN was going to do this as well. We use Zapier a lot internally. And so it has a speak in plain English, and then Zapier will do the first format draft of all the workflow nodes and connect them to each other. I assume that NAN must have that now, right?
I would think so, yeah. This one I created quite a long time ago, but the agent node I find is really useful when you have multiple tools that you want to call and you don't want to write all the nodes out to it, and just let the AI figure out, okay, what tool do I call in order to do what here? And in this case, I found it was a lot easier to let the agent figure out the tools that it was going to call into and when to call into them.
That's awesome. And do you all run N8N internally, or do you use cloud? Like, do you use the N8N cloud service, or how are you guys using it?
Yeah, we use the N8N cloud service. In general, we've adopted a philosophy here where we don't want to run anything internally. So whether it's anything from our services running in AWS, and we're running as many AWS managed services as possible. Same thing here. N8N can run the servers and run the services for us, and we can save our time working on other things.
That makes sense. I mean, this is amazing. I hope that this gives people a lot of ideas. And one other thing that I will say is that there are a lot of templates, right? So there are common templates and things. And, obviously the stuff that you showed is amazing and people should start. But if people do feel overwhelmed, there are templates to start from. There's a lot of great like N8 and intro videos on YouTube. So there's a lot of resources. But yeah, I mean, the email labeling and categorizing things sounds like something that is applicable to literally everybody. And it didn't seem like it had that many nodes. So that's probably a good place for people to begin.
I think so. And I think the other thing to think about is you can actually use AI to write the workflows. So you can go into ChatGPT or go into Claude and say, I need a workflow in N8N that does blah, and then it'll write the actual JSON for you, and then you can just copy that JSON, paste it right into the canvas, and boom, there you've got your actual application. You can vibe code it as you're going. You can give it just instructions, say, oh, you're missing this, or how would you do this instead? And it'll actually fix it. So it's been definitely a couple of times where I've had a workflow that I've created and I haven't gotten it working 100% right. And then I've exported it from N8N into JSON, imported that into ChatGPT or Claude, and said, hey, I need you to fix this because this isn't doing exactly what I needed to do. So yeah, like the YouTube stuff's good. There's tons of articles online, but at the end of the day, you can even just use AI to write all the workflows too.
This is the thing that I've been impressed with these workflow tools is that now they're like building AI components inside of themselves. The other day I was playing with Gumloop, which is another tool in this category. And it's just amazing, like their internal Gumloop assistant, like just anything that you run into, it'll just tell you, yep, this is how you fix it, and so on and so forth. So in other words, like these tools are getting easier to use.
Yeah, and it then has something similar, right? Where you can create a workflow, and then if you end up running into a problem in your workflow, you just click the assistant, and it'll actually go in and try and debug it. I've found that it wasn't using the most up to date model. I don't know what it was using, but I did find that I was getting better responses by exporting it. But sometimes you're right, like the tool itself has help and assistance inside of it that can actually fix whatever it is that the problem is. That is totally true, and it is amazing and how quick that stuff is evolving into being really, really, really useful.
Normally, I end with a question of, what are you most excited about? But I might change this, which is there anything that you want to automate that you haven't been able to automate just yet? Maybe you haven't had the time, maybe the tools are not there, but is there like anything else that is on your wish list?
The one that I came to mind this morning was just having something that could analyze all the performance of the whole business. Right. And so there's definitely ways, like I have other tools that are automatically, looking into Salesforce and looking at our data in Salesforce and analyzing our pipeline and stuff. But I'd love something that looked at our financials, looked at Salesforce, compared our financials to best practices from other SaaS companies of our size, gave me a report on how I was doing. I don't have anything that does that just yet. We do, I'm sure you do it too. Like you do a quarterly business review. Imagine doing like a monthly business review from AI where it's like, here's my financials, here's all the information for the business. I mean, I have an opinion of how it's doing, but I would love to know from your opinion and comparing it to best practices. Like, how are we doing? Where would you focus? That I think is the next one on my list. And the difficulty I find is just that the data is in so many different places. And like we were talking earlier about the MCP service, there's not a lot of connectors into the tools that we're using. So I can't go and extract Salesforce data automatically. I can't extract the financial information. I have to open that up in an Excel file. I do find it increasingly when I'm trying to open up our financial model in Excel that it doesn't get the right cells and it's misreading stuff. So you almost have to teach it the format of the file first. I'm going to keep playing with it, but that's the next one I think on my list. Is just give me a report card on where we're doing from a business perspective, so that as I have to fill out, report cards or reports for the board on how we're doing, it makes it a lot easier if I've got some background on like, oh yeah, this is where you could be improving.
I think if you built that, I know you're busy doing Rewind, but that could be a separate product.
I think there's tons of products out there, don't you? Like, I think there's the neat thing about it is the usefulness is there's just so many useful tools that you could build for yourself and that are applicable to other people. The difficulty, I think, is these days is just the go to market and how do you differentiate yourself in a time where there's so many people building so many tools out there. That's the more difficult part. I think if I was to do it, you just have to do it for fun and be like, here, everybody go use this. It's open source. It's free. Go ahead.
Well, if you do ever make it open source and free, we'll
We
invite
get
you
some
back
people.
on to tell everybody. Mike, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for doing this.
My pleasure. It was super fun to be here and to chat with you. Thanks for having me.
And that's it for today. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of This New Way. If you like the content, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe so you can get notified when we post the next episode. See you next time.